Any substance used to entice and capture fish, such as on a fishing hook, is called fishing bait. To increase prey capture success, bait items are both chosen from and placed in the environment. Traditionally, fishing baits have included natural fish food, including night crawlers, insects, worms, and smaller bait fish that have been used to catch fish. Additionally, processed food, plastic baits, and more recently, bionic lures have all been used by fishermen to draw in fish. Despite the significance of a fish's attraction to bait, little is known about how fish respond to various types of bait. The target species and its environment are the major factors that determine the various methods and bait that a fisher may use. Artificial and natural baits are the two basic categories into which bait can be divided. Artificial and live bait alternatives typically exhibit comparable effectiveness. The general type and size of the bait will influence fishing effectiveness and catch rates. These two popular methods of fishing also raise environmental issues. It is well recognized that some bait fish can spread disease and are invasive. The loss and disposal of artificial baits is a recurring subject while examining its utilization. Ecosystem issues may result from the disposal of lures. There are no hard and fast rules in fishing, but generally speaking, fish are accustomed to coming into contact with their food in a certain way. The more faithfully you can replicate this natural presentation, the more probable it is that the fish, particularly the larger ones, will bite. Many individuals use trace materials that are overly thick, which the fish can detect more easily and refuse. Additionally, because it is stiff, the bait cannot move in the water as naturally. If taken to the nth degree, the two thicknesses of line in the loop won't fit through the eye of the hook when trying to loop hooks onto a ledger or dropper rig. Therefore, it is preferable to use lighter trace material, but not so light that it cannot withstand being nibbled on by fish teeth and scales or being lightly rubbed against rocks and weeds. The history of the practice of bait fishing is mostly unknown. It is conceivable that passive bait fishing, which involves birds wading near bait or lures that are already on the surface of the water, may have served as a behavioral or evolutionary forerunner to active bait fishing. By enabling a bird to make an association between placing objects in water and the presence of fish, some researchers have hypothesized that dunking behaviors, in which food is dipped into water before being eaten, may have occurred before the placement of bait. Given that bait fishing is uncommon yet has been seen in several distinct places, it has probably independently occurred several times. Thus, there are many possible causes for this behavior. Although some researchers have hypothesized that bait fishing requires particular cognitive skills, similar to other tool use situations, there is currently no evidence to support this. With light line and trace, tiny hooks, and tiny baits, little fish, like jack mackerel or other bait fish, are rather simple to catch. When fishing for species like snapper or blue cod, however, is a poor strategy. Small hooks will likely result in a large number of undersized fish that must be released. The handling, hook wound and possible decompression damage caused can mean they do not survive and so are wasted. Therefore, you need to strike a balance by choosing the right size hook, the thinnest leader thickness that is still practical, and the lightest sinker that will get your line to the fish as efficiently as possible. However, that does not mean that you should use line and terminal tackle that is so light and delicate that you will mostly capture small fish or that you won't be able to handle larger fish if you hook them. Use a lightweight leader, about 4 to 6 kilograms for bait fish, 10 to 20 kilograms for fish like snapper, cod, gurnard, and kehoi, etc., and 40 kilograms for large species like kingfish and hapuku/groper. The leader must be attached to hooks designed to capture fish that are at least legal size, together with the lightest sinker that is practical to use. Such gear will attract more fish bites and catch more of them. Since some fish will consume a wide variety of foods, many different fish species can be caught using a variety of baits. Skipjack, bonito, gray mullet, pilchards, squid, and baitfish like jack mackerel and piper are some of the baits used. Other fish species favor certain foods like shrimp, crabs, or crayfish. Desirable species like the blue moki and the spotted smoothhound are among these finicky eaters, and they are definitely worth pursuing. Choose the finest baits for the popular fish species in your area by learning more about them. What you're attempting to catch and the conditions you're trying to catch it in will determine whether artificial lures or real bait is preferable for capturing fish as quickly and easily as possible. A lure works better in some situations, while bait is preferable in others. Each method does, however, have certain broad benefits and drawbacks. Fishing lures are tiny, man-made items that resemble a fish's prey and are fastened to the end of a fishing line with a hook. Fish are drawn to your line using them. The market is filled with a wide variety of lures, including jigs, spinners, spoons, fly lures, crankbaits, and plugs. Even LEDs have been incorporated by some lure producers. Fishing lures are frequently weighted and use a combination of movements, vibrations, colors, and shiny reflections to encourage fish to bite, whether they are made of rubber, plastic, metal, or a combination of these materials. Lures can be purchased only once and are reusable. Since lures don't require specific storage like soil or water tanks, your tackle box will weigh considerably less. Lures are clean and odorless. Collecting lures is enjoyable, and using them is both active and fulfilling. Using lures can increase your catch and reduce the number of undesirable fish on your line. By decreasing deep hooking, which causes higher fish mortality rates, lures aid in catch and release fishing by increasing the survival rate of fish. Utilizing lures lessens an angler's reliance on bait, preventing overfishing of bait species and preserving bait population levels. At the same manner, these are drawbacks of lures for fishing. Finding the greatest fishing lures for the fish you're hoping to catch can be difficult because there are so many different kinds available. This implies that your tackle box could become cluttered. No matter how much fun it is to collect lures, if you're not careful, they may grow expensive and not all of them will work. Lures may become entangled in vegetation, branches, or rocks. Additionally, they won't be very useful at night or in muddy water. Casting fishing lures where there are lots of fish makes them more effective. You may have to move to several locations while waiting for a bite because lures, unlike bait, won't draw fish from great distances. Lures aren't as simple as bait since they need the correct weight, hook size, and color combination to work well for the fish you're attempting to catch. In other words, newcomers may find it difficult to sort through all the possibilities. Lures are only successful under the ideal circumstances, for better or worse. It is ideal to employ lures when the water is lovely and transparent. The climate has warmed up. You're up against predatory, aggressive fish. There are plenty of small or untargeted fish in the area. In a catch and release zone, you are. Whenever the waterways are designated as artificial only or fly and lure only on signage. Living creatures are referred to as natural baits and are used to entice fish to your hook. Worms, minnows, leeches, insects, and shrimp are among the most prevalent species. Bait are actual fish prey as opposed to artificial lures, which imitate a fish's prey. With very few exceptions, the natural bait angler will use a common fish prey species as an attractant. Live or dead natural bait might be employed. Worms, leeches, especially the bait leech Nephelopsis obscura, minnows, frogs, salamanders, and insects are examples of common natural baits. Natural baits work well because of their realistic texture, flavor, and color. According to studies, fish are more likely to recognize and accept natural baits like croaker and shrimp. Because fish are more drawn to the real live prey you're giving, bait is quite successful. They firmly latch on, increasing the likelihood of having a deeply hooked fish on the end of your line who is less prone to snag. A deep hooked fish, however, is a drawback if you practice catch and release. Bait attracts a variety of fish species, boosting your chances of landing a catch. Over time, lures are frequently more expensive than bait. If you discover it on your own while exploring nature, it is free. Since bait draws fish from all over, you may simply set up your pole and wait for something to bite. And used bait can either be frozen until your next excursion or returned to nature. You can gain a better grasp of which fish prefer specific prey by researching the fundamentals of bait. Compared to lure fishing, bait is dirtier and more offensive. Especially if you're capturing your own bait, be prepared to have your hands, clothing, and equipment filthy and muddy. Bait requires unique storage requirements, such as cooling or circulating water. The weight of carrying bait is typically higher than that of artificial lures because of these storage issues. In order to ensure you have enough bait, it is necessary to make more frequent trips to the bait store. Fish prey are overharvested as a result of baited fishing. All kinds of fish, including small ones or fish you weren't specifically looking to catch, are drawn to bait. In catch and release fishing, bait merely serves to enhance the likelihood of firmly hooked fish, which lowers the likelihood of the fish surviving. The appropriate circumstances are essential for bait to be effective, much like with lures. When using bait, you should. The water is sluggish or cloudy. It's evening. You're just starting out and want to catch anything. You're angling for big fish. Outside is chilly, or even better, go ice fishing. Your next meal is on the line. The lures versus bait argument has no obvious winner in the end. And this is by no means a complete list of the advantages and disadvantages of each approach. It all depends on the species you're trying to catch, your level of experience, and your conditions. Each style of fishing has advantages and disadvantages. Fish larger than the minimum legal size, so you can take them home and eat them, and preferably even bigger than this are the ones you want to catch while fishing for the table because larger fish have more flesh. There are strategies to target bigger fish, but since there are many more little than large fish, doing so could result in losing out on a useful catch of more modest specimens. Larger baits attract larger fish. Although there are no absolutes in fishing, this statement is true in the long run. Larger baits will result in larger fish being caught overall. This is partially due to the smaller fish's inability to swallow large baits, however they can nibble at the margins. The fact that you should use bigger hooks with them so that the hook point or points are not strangled, as indicated above, is another reason why employing huge baits will assist you avoid small fish. Set the rod in a holder. Throw out a huge, robust bait like a half a jack mackerel that is fixed on two large hooks, one of which is a circle hook, and wait for a large fish to attach itself before removing the pole. This keeps people from being tempted to strike too soon, before the fish has properly eaten the bait. It is necessary to set a sufficient drag on the reel in order for the fish to hook itself, but you shouldn't set it so high that, in the event of a large fish striking, the line might break or the rod might be carried away. Although there are many exceptions, fishing is often at its finest in the morning and evening. This is due to low light levels. At these times, the sun is at an acute angle to the sea's surface, reflecting much of the light back into space. Predatory fish, often the species you wish to catch, take advantage of bad weather to go hunting. Additionally, the fish have a tougher time seeing your terminal gear. The ideal tide for fishing may differ from location to location, but tidal movement is key since it widens the scent trail left by your bait and burley, luring fish and making it simpler for them to locate your offering. An incoming to high tide is considered to be the best at beaches, wharves, and other inshore locations because it enables fish to hunt in productive feeding places that were too shallow for them while the tide was lower. Overall, low light and a fruitful tidal phase are typically the ideal conditions, early or late in the day. Without a doubt, utilizing a burley trail to draw fish in and get them to feed may significantly improve your fishing success when using baits or live baits. When we were little, we would mix stale bread with water and drop it into the water at the nearby dock to attract yellow-eye mullet. Today, we chop up old fish remains, ideally oily things like skipjack, with any other marine remains, such as scallop frills, powa intestine, old baitfish, etc., and we might add fish oil and pig or chicken pellets to give it some extra weight. The resulting muddle is frozen into burley bombs, which, depending on the circumstance, can be dropped in net bags at the surface or weighted and lowered underground. The finished bomb can also be purchased at bait shops and gas stations. The bomb releases particles and a smell trail that floats downstream with the water as it slowly melts. Any fish that crosses the route will swim upstream to the source, preferably where your baited hooks are. However, burley has two sides to it. If you do it incorrectly, burley fishermen may avoid you. When fishing for bottom-feeding fish, for instance, casting burley at the surface in strong currents and/or deep water means that by the time the burley descends to the seafloor, the fish it attracts will have dispersed far from the fishing location. The burley trail will also be off to the side of the boat, away from where your stray-lined baits are, and directly downstream of the boat if you tie a burley bomb to your anchor chain while a side breeze is keeping the boat at an angle to the current. Most of the experts involved in presenting and writing articles seem to have been discovered because of their skill with bait fishing, which is likely how we all learn to fish. This entails that they frequently reiterate the significance of bait in saltwater angling and write largely about what they are most knowledgeable about. There is obviously nothing wrong with this, except you avoid using bait, in which case the constant debate about the specifics of bait fishing quickly becomes irrelevant and dull. I don't mind in any case because I really believe that everyone to their own. However, I did consciously decide to quit using bait almost 16 years ago. Even lure fishermen appear to believe that ground bait is necessary to draw fish in close enough so that they may be targeted with their fur, feather, and plastic inventions. One must inquire why. Surely, even in its slightly modified version, this is just bait fishing? Concentrate the fish, then employ cunning to focus on a certain species. It's not nearly as effective as locating a single fish and slowly pursuing it, or reading the water to determine where the big fish will be holding. In its most basic form, this is merely a halfway house between bait fishing and lure fishing. It is simple to use 20 kilograms of pilchards in a day during the summer when the snapper are in close proximity to breeding and there are many little fish present and only get 1 or 2 legal fish. Small fish pick at the bait until they totally remove it and are rarely hooked, thus the advice to use big hooks to avoid hooking smaller fish only makes the problem worse. Why even try? Continue looking until you locate fish that are big enough to keep, and don't let smaller fish steal your bait. Maybe it's time we fishermen took a good, hard look at ourselves and how our activities affect the fishery rather than lamenting the lack of fish and blaming others for the fishery's demise. It is past time for us to rely less on ground bait and bait. I do not suggest that anglers cease using bait, rather I suggest that they use less of it, particularly kehoi, skipjack tuna, and trevally. Instead of using these fish as bait, target them with minimal gear and take in the amazing battle. When you surfcast from the beach or travel offshore in a boat to try to catch something on an artificial bait, bring a light spinning rod with you. The other thing I want you to do is occasionally start fishing without bait by going cold turkey. Utilize your wits to locate and lure in fish, including flies. You will undoubtedly improve as a fisherman as a result, without a doubt. To sum up, bait fishing is an uncommon type of tool use in which an animal intentionally places buoyant objects on the water's surface in an effort to attract or divert potential prey. The heron family, Ardeidae, exhibits this behavior the most frequently, along with a few other water birds. Flies are one of the most effective types of bait, and it may involve the placing of a variety of different items. Similar activities, sometimes called baiting, have been recorded among other species, mostly to catch invertebrate food.